welcome to episode 2 of the Knit Assembly podcast. My name is Ashley Ling and I'm a knitter in Vancouver, Canada. Just a note before we get started that this will be a knitting and swearing friendly podcast, so if this is not for you, feel free to skip to another podcast. So today is December 28th, 2020. New Year's Eve is on Thursday, and during this week I like to take stock of what 2020 looked like from knitting and then also take a look forward into 2021 and setting some goals. So one of my goals for knitting this year is to knit 21 hats in 2021. If you have been following me on Instagram or have seen my last podcast, you'll know that I knit 20 hats in 2020 for charity. I chose a local charity here in Vancouver called the Kettle Society and knit 20 hats in acrylic using the Barley hat pattern by Tin Can Knits. It's a free knit. And I was able to do a ton of TV, podcast, social knitting. So I am doing a lot of phone calls with friends and it's the perfect knit to have handy and just grab and do a couple rows. One hat took me about 2 or 3 evenings max if I concentrated on it, and I knit the adult size primarily. So I'm issuing a challenge to each of you because it's the beginning of 2021 coming up, that if you'd like to join me, please do, and knitting 21 hats for a charity of your choice in your local neighborhood to help the homeless. And let me know how that goes. Comment below or use the hashtag 21hats in 2021. That's the hashtag I'll be using to track my progress. And one of the commitments through this podcast is to share how I'm doing against that goal. Today I'll be speaking about podcast and Instagram accounts that are inspiring me right now, what I'm wearing, finished objects, works in progress, what I'm dreaming about, a blast from the stash, and some questions for you. Podcasts that I really enjoy listening to right now are the Cozy Up Knits podcast, and these are 4 sisters in Grand Prairie, Alberta, Canada, and they are a riot. You turn them on and they're casual and you feel like you're knitting with them. They're always up to something. They're designing something almost on a weekly basis. They seem to be releasing something. It's probably more like monthly, but it seems pretty frequent. And right now it looks like they're doing a mystery knit along that starts, I believe, January 1st. So go check them out. They're a lot of fun. The next one is MDQuilter Knits, and she is a knitter in the United States. She is a test knitter for many famous designers, so she's often knitting on things that are fresh off the press in terms of patterns, so it's really interesting to see her take on it, and she is one speedy knitter. She is able to get a lot of production done. And her acquisitions and her yarn wall behind her also is absolutely amazing. The last one I'd like to highlight today is Covert Knits. She is a knitter in the United States, and she is someone who is very direct about her podcast. You know exactly what to expect during her podcast, and she is to the point. I really enjoy that, and her stash acquisitions are phenomenal. So even if I'm not buying yarn, I feel like I am when I watch her podcast and knitting vicariously through her. So check her out as well. Some Instagram accounts that I am inspired by right now. The first is the Petite knitter, and she is a knitter and designer in Iqaluit, Nunavut, which is in northern Canada. And she has beautiful photography. She lives above the Arctic Circle, so it actually looks cold all the time, but she brings the higa into every shot, so it's warm and cold, and she kind of manages to send the experience of the quintessential knitting experience. And it's just, they're just gorgeous photos. And check out her designs. They're beautiful yokes. One is the fox sweater, I believe, and it's like these little cute foxes. So beautiful color work, and they look cozy and warm. The next podcast I'd like to highlight is Tif Neilan, and she is a designer in the United States. If you have been following Laine, the magazine, she has a recently highlighted sweater that as soon as I saw it, I queued it right away in Ravelry, and called Ascend. and it's beautiful, and I'm super excited to knit this and figure out what yarn to use. It's super rustic and has a really nice drape to it and simple design, so I think it's complicated enough to keep my mind busy, but at the same time be able to watch a TV show as well. Another pattern that she has designed is Gray Space, and she tends to knit and design a lot of cropped patterns, and I wasn't quite sure on my body type if that would look good or how that works, but I'm interested in layering and having a tank top underneath. Some people wear these crop tops over dresses. That's not really my style. I'm a jeans and t-shirt kind of girl. So, but having a layered tank top underneath looks really good. So check out Gray Space, which is another cropped design that she has made that I think is going into my queue as well. So the last Instagram account that I've been inspired by recently is Knox Mountain Knit Co, and they are two ladies here locally in Kelowna, British Columbia, and they have designed so many hats, so many shawls, that when you have that perfect skeiny yarn and you're like, what am I gonna do with this? Go check out their account. They're highlighting all of their patterns throughout the last month, I believe, and it's really nice to see ones that I'd forgotten about. And one that has caught my eye recently that I've queued and purchased was the Larch Hat. And this is designed to use worsted weight stash yarn and leftovers. And I'm really excited to use those. And it's a simple design, but it brings them together quite nicely. So I'm excited to knit that. Moving on to what I'm wearing. So speaking of crop tops, I am wearing the Nuuk sweater by Jonna, and I'm going to forget her last name, so I'll post it below. But it falls just slightly above my hips, and I knit it in the Brooklyn Tweed Hayloft. And again, it was one of those that I just saw and wanted to knit exactly what the pattern shows. So I knit it out of Brooklyn Tweed Shelter in Hayloft. It's this beautiful yellow color. I haven't knit a lot of things yellow, so I was really pleasantly surprised at choosing this. It was fun to knit because of the color, and it was really simple, so I could listen to podcasts at the same time. And I love it. It's probably one of my most worn sweaters. I like that it's short sleeve, it doesn't roll, and it's not pilling at all. So I am wearing it currently with a white tank top underneath. So where I feel it's a bit short, that tank top kind of covers up. So I love it. So moving on to the finished objects, I have not completed as many finished objects as I did in the first podcast, but remember in the first podcast, because it was my first, I was able to choose the last like 2 or 3 months worth of finished objects. The last time I podcast was only 2 weeks ago, so I'm feeling pretty good that I finished at least one thing before now, and actually I believe 4 things. The first finished object that I don't actually have with me. It was a rush gift to send off to my friend Sarah, and I'll post a picture here. Thank you, Sarah, for taking a photo. I didn't even have time to take a photo. But it's the Teeny Tiny Mochimochi Santa by Hrachovec, and they are super cute. They are, you can just have little teeny tiny ones sitting around, but I chose to make it into an ornament for my own tree a couple years ago, and you can see see that in my first podcast. So my friend saw it and really wanted one, and it's super cute to get in the mail. Unfortunately, she got it after Christmas, but thankfully I think her tree was still up, so they can maybe enjoy it for a day or two before they take it down. As you can see, my tree is less decorated right now, and today is the day that I like to clean up everything. I am someone who, once Christmas is done, I like to be done and put all my decorations away and moving on to the new year and keeping elements of the Hygge way of just, bringing nature in, but not the Christmas in. Christmas is done. The next finished object that I'd like to show is the Sheep by Susan B. Anderson, and I knit this out of the Rowan 4-ply fingering, and I'll put the specific details here. But he's so cute. A little purple sheep for my daughter, and he is well loved. This pattern should have taken me much less time than it did. Knitting smaller items is always more finicky. You think it's smaller, so therefore it would take less time, but really it's quite finicky for me. So what I like to do is I would like to break up the project into little chunks, and I ended up picking up other projects in the meantime between those little chunks, and I forgot where I was in my little chunks. So number one, one of my resolutions this year is to take better notes on my patterns so I remember where I left off. And number two, just continue knitting the same, be a little more monogamous in my knitting. So super cute. She's got 3 different designs. There's a colorwork motif and I think flat fuzzier motif, and then these loops. So it was definitely a fun knit. I really liked making the legs. You actually wrap the yarn around a couple times to make them a little bit sturdy, and then they kind of can dance around a bit. So that's she. My next finished object are actually 3 finished objects. Are my mug sweater by Jerry Birch, and this is a pattern on Ravelry that I believe is free, and it's a DK weight sweater, or a mug sweater, so a knitting cozy for your mugs. So I like to drink iced lattes, and I finished this one off out of the Yoth Big Sister yarn in the colorway Kale, and inside is my iced latte. So I am actually using these to help prevent my fingers getting cold while I have a cold drink in here out at the playground. I love my iced lattes. I'm an iced latte snob. My daughter then saw that I was doing this, and she wanted a knitting cozy, and I was already planning on making a pink one, and she loves pink. So I made her this Canis Fiber yarns in Yellow Label DK, and it's the colorway Royal Flush. And it's super cute and pretty, and she puts it over her sippy cup. She specifically asked for ice in her water so she could have a cozy as well on her sippy cup. And the last one, of course, to even out for the family is this one here in this gorgeous yellow color, Sweet Georgia yarns in I think Sweet DK in ginger. So this one will be for my husband as well. Super simple to knit, probably took me half an hour, 45 minutes to knit the whole thing. So pretty fun, fast, and definitely a social knitting project. My next finished object is the little reindeer. Super cute. My daughter commissioned this actually for my husband for Christmas to be a pilot. He flies remote control airplanes. He builds them and flies them. So they often need little pilots to fly them. And she wanted a reindeer, and of course Rudolph. So this is the reindeer from the Santa and Reindeer pattern by Covert. And I believe it's a free pattern, and it's a DK weight yarn. I remember actually it is free, and it needs, when you go onto the Covert website and the link, it actually takes you to a ton of patterns, so maybe check those out. But it took a while to scroll to get to the Santa reindeer knits, but I found it, and he's super cute. Definitely finicky as well, because again, small, it's a small knit. You knit the antler pieces separately and sew each of the pieces on. And also the instructions weren't 100% clear on the website for sewing up the body, but I just made do and made it up, and it totally worked. That took me a couple nights to make. So I have 4 finished objects total. So that will be probably the end of my 2020 and finished objects. So I feel good that I've finished off a lot of things this year. And then moving into the next year, I have decided to cast on all the things. I felt bad that all of my knitting project bags were empty, and I needed some inspiration and different things that I could pick up at different times. I realized that being a non-monogamous knitter, that this is gonna each item's going to take a longer time, but we'll see how this goes, and it is kind of fun to be able to pick up different things creatively. So looking at Christmas, I actually didn't get any yarn from anyone, and that's okay. I've got tons of stash, but I did get a beautiful project tote bag from Boku. They were on my wish list, and thank you very much for those who helped my husband read the wish list. But I got a beautiful project tote from Boku called the Suka Design Project Tote. And it's this gorgeous sweater size project tote. It's wax canvas, super structured. I really like my project bags structured. My friend Sarah laughs, but it's just something that I'm super particular about. Inside, there's only a couple pockets, which is actually really nice because then I'm not forgetting where I put things. In the next bag I'll show you, it has a ton of pockets, which is seemingly nice, but it's actually, I always am trying to find where I put something. And it's got a canvas on the inside. You can, there we go, cinch this closed if you want at the top, just like any other project bag, or keep it open. You've got the handles, and you've also got a leather strap as well, so you can do a crossbody or around your shoulder tote. In it, I made sure to have an extra special project, which is what I mentioned last time, the Good Neighbor cardigan by Amy Herzog. And I am knitting it out of the Woolfolk in Far in, it's like a plum color. And it is it's beautiful and it's super soft. I have not touched it since the last podcast, so I did download the pattern and it took a look, and you need to do a provisional cast on, which is again a little bit of a project for me just to sit down and do the cast on and then be able to start social knitting, so I have to do that. We'll see when I get this done. Hopefully I can get this done for him by his birthday, which is February, but I'm not going to tell him that because I told him that last year, and you know, look where I ended up. So the next work in progress I have is in the Twig and Horn bag, which is a waxed crossbody canvas tote. It has great structure on the outside. I really like the wax canvas, and it's in a camo design. I believe it's something woodland. I've forgotten the color that they call it. And it's got a ton of pockets on the outside, which I love to carry things. And honestly, a lot of the times I reach my hand into a pocket and it's a surprise of what's in there because I've forgotten. It's taken so long. I have kept my Fable sweater by Tia Ryder in here. And this is a sweater for my daughter. And it is going to be a unicorn. And I'm knitting this out of the Barocco Ultra Wool in Chunky, and it's like purple and white colorways. And just super gorgeous. And I don't know about you, but I haven't knit intarsia for years, about 10 years. And I tried it when I was a beginner and I wasn't very successful at it. And so I put that to the back of my mind saying I can't do it. And then Fraser saw this sweater and she really wanted to have a unicorn sweater. I'm like, okay, and it's intarsia. I'm like, okay, what do I do? And whenever I need a technique, I go to a site called Very Pink Knits. I find her tutorials are fantastic. They're short, they're clear, and the way she has the camera angles, she has really good lighting, so she's able to show you the technique really easily. And the nice thing about YouTube videos, of course, is that you can stop and rewind as many times as you'd like. So check her out. So I looked up Very Pink Knits and intarsia and followed her instruction, and I am super happy with the result. It's actually not that complicated. If anybody has done color work or is about to do color work, it's a really good video to watch and technique to do, and was pretty simple. And maybe because it's also chunky, that's helped, but I'm really pleased with the result. I'm trying to keep the back as tidy as I can. Because it's intarsia, there are different strands and things, and more strands at the back, but of course that's the back. I've also knit the back of her sweater, which is just plain. And if you see that progress creeper, it's one of my favorites. It's from Riv Creative, and it's this beautiful paper crane. Yeah, it's pretty fun. I like to see my progress along my knitting, especially when I'm doing something that's in stockinette and taking a long time. So smaller weight yarns, even bigger weight yarns too. It's kind of fun to play a game, and I'm a little bit competitive. So what I like to do is actually put 2 progress keepers and keep those going of I knit from here to here from last time, and then see if I can beat what I did last time and then put the next one up. So it provides me a little incentive for those that are a little bit more monotonous. I don't know about you, but my purses and my knitting bag projects are full of everything. It depends what I'm knitting and where I'm going. So for example, I have my journal in it because I was doing goal work the other day. And then I've got my wallet. I've got like all these different cute little notions box. And I don't know about you, so always have a snack in your bag just in case. Next, work in progress I have not made any progress on. I have done a lot of research on it, but I haven't quite been able to do any action or apply it yet. I'm a little bit stuck. This is the Petite Lisette by Julie Parti. It's a beautiful little baby dress. I knit it out of the Hope Say Gold yarn in, I'm going to put the colorway below. I knit it, I blocked it, and I blocked it on top of my brown project, so it's created this yellowy brown stain on the back shoulder. My plan is to over dye it. I was looking at the local dye company, Meiwa, and they have some great options, and someone recommended the acid dye just because it's going to be done in one shot. It will be absorbed by the dress quite a bit, and Meiwa is offering acid dyes, but they had this big note in capital letters at the very bottom of their one acid dye that they're providing saying does not. So what I'm going to do is speak with my very knowledgeable and former dyer friend Lisa and see what her recommendation is to get this into a beautiful maybe crimson color if I can on a budget and be successful. The goal is to remove that stain and have it look as consistent as I can. My next work in progress is something that I have not touched again since the last podcast, but I'm planning to do that before the end of 2020. So that's knitting 2 rows on the Valeriana Estonica and in this golden thread. A little bit messy, but we'll get there. My plan is to knit 2 of those, I believe, on, I think it might have to be tonight, otherwise it's not gonna happen, maybe Wednesday. Something I'm swatching for now is the Missoni Accomplished by Espace Tricot, and it's a free pattern. It's a beautiful sweater pattern with these big zigzags across it. It's a little bit bold for what I like to wear, but I am doing this in the Fiber Company Acadia, which is this gorgeous yarn. I'll get the tag here. It is a rustic blend of silk noil, baby alpaca, and merino wool. And I wouldn't say it's rustic. I'm not quite sure what they mean by rustic, but it is super soft, not remotely rustic, has that sheen from the silk. This is the colorway Muscle, super beautiful, kind of purpley gray, dark gray, purpley black color, literally like the mussel shells we see here in BC. And that's the main color, and I'm going to stripe it with the colorway Sea Lavender, which is this gray purple. It's got flecks of purple, kind of flecks of pink overtones in it as well. Beautiful. I don't know about you, but I like to swatch where I take the suggested needle and I go down 1 needle size and I go up 1 needle size. So for example, if it's US 7, then I take a US 6 and a US 8, and I start with the US 6 and I knit the first about 4 inches, and then I put a garter row in between, so a purl row, and then I switch needle sizes, and so the middle is the gauge, preferred gauge needle or recommended gauge needle, and then the next is the highest one. So I have 3 different sections. There's often times where I have forgotten which size is which because it can get turned around. So I learned this trick from Brooklyn Tweed, I think, actually, that to knit, and did I do it on this one? Let's see. On the edge, so it doesn't affect your measurements, to knit the number of stitches, purl the number of stitches across. You can't quite see it here on the screen. Purl the number of stitches across of the size of the needle, so I can count the number of stitches, and I know that's the US 8 or the US 6. So little tips and tricks, that's what I like to do. I don't like having to bind off and then do another swatch for the next size of needle. I like to automatically assume I'll probably be within 3 range, and the worst case I can knit another swatch if the calculation doesn't work out, but majority of the time it does. The next one I am knitting is in my Riv Creative bag, so it's a limited edition. And beautiful bag made by my friend Sarah of Riv Creative. This is actually some leftover lace from her grandmother who has since passed. So it's a beautiful memory piece, and I love the cream lace, this antique feel with the dark jean. It's beautiful. She also did a nice strap if I were someone who knit while standing up. I still haven't quite learned how to do that, but it's good for hanging and holding on to. In it, I have matched my yarn with the project bag because why not? I have started the Salt Shawl by Sylvia McFadden. She's a local designer here, also known as Soft Sweater on Instagram. She's a beautiful person and beautiful designer, does lots of great designs, and I'll post a photo here. And I am knitting, so teeny tiny, I think I've done 17 rows so far, so just teeny tiny. The yarn I'm knitting this out of is the Malabrigo Rios, which means river in Spanish, and each ply is for each of the 4 major rivers in Uruguay. So this colorway is beautiful. It's called Pearl 10, and it's this gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous yarn. It looks like, and that's probably accurate color there. So super dark. It's almost like the dark muscle color. So dark purples and grays and blues kind of all combined. The next work in progress, so I'm filling up all my project bags, like I said, is being knit in my limited edition Miso Crafty Knits sunglasses bag. I love it. I actually won this from her, and this was way back when I first started knitting, so I was super excited, and I still use it, as you can see, all the time, and held up well. She's not selling bags anymore, so I'm super lucky that I have this and see it as a limited edition. I am knitting the Calm Sweater by Fiona Alice, who designed this on behalf of Brooklyn Tweed. It's this beautiful fingering sweater. It's gorgeous detail, and I really like how the design details of it, and it's not too complicated. I really like the look of cables. I don't like knitting cables, and so this is a nice textured design without having any cables. I decided to pick a yarn from my stash that actually looks a lot like the colorway in the sample, and it is this gorgeous kind of coppery gold. It's called Feldspar colorway, and it's the O-Wool O-Wash fingering, and it's a 2-ply. It's 100% merino, and it's certified organic, and I got this at Rhinebeck a couple years ago, and her booth, we went back, my friend Sarah and I went back like 2 or 3 times and just had our arms full. We knew where we wanted to go, and this was number 1. There's not many organic yarn companies out there, and it's, you know, a lot of work, of course, to get there. But it's super beautiful. It's got the sheen, and it's a 2-ply yarn. So I think this will show the detail of the pattern really, really well. The next work in progress that I have almost cast on, but I've wound the yarn and I've put it in the project bag. Put this in my Danica bag. Danica is a bag and tea towel printing company, and they have really nice structured bags. This was actually being sold by Sweet Fiber at the Knit City, I think one of the first Knit Cities. And so I picked it up there. So it's been probably 6 years since I've had this. The one thing about these bags is that, as you can see on the inside, it's starting to fall apart. It hasn't quite flaked off onto the yarn. It's into big pieces. I really like the design on the outside, so I think I need to replace this bag pretty soon, but in the meantime, I'm gonna still use it. I do like that structure of the extra layer on the inside. So I think it's normally like a toiletry bag, but can definitely be used as a knitting project bag too. The project that I am knitting is the Wanderer wrap or shawl. It's this really cool, super big, looks like social knitting wrap that is going to take me forever probably, but it is out of Aran yarn, so maybe not. But I am knitting it out of the fiber company Aran Moore, which is an Aran weight yarn in this cool colorway called Malin Head, which is this black tweedy colors of gray. Is gray flecks in here primarily. I think it'll be super chic. I'm super excited to wear it, and probably very warm and really good for a transition piece when I go out. The next work in progress that I have is my last one. I'm not going to promise that I won't be casting on anything else, but I have swatched, and the swatch is drying right now for a Jonna sweater designed by my friend Lisa Niemanen. And it's this beautiful sweater that's gonna be super simple and looks like a really nice layering piece. Again, slightly cropped, so I think I probably will wear it like this one without the long sleeve shirts underneath. I don't really like that bulk of having lots and lots of layers, but probably a tank top underneath. And I am gonna knit it out of the Brooklyn Tweed Loft, which is a fingering weight, in pumpernickel. It's this dark brown, chestnut brown. It's just super, super light. I bought this yarn a long time ago from Brooklyn Tweed to knit this big, long sweater coat. So I actually have a ton of this pumpernickel. So I'm gonna see if I can squeeze two projects out of it. One is the Jonna and one is this other vest by Julie Hoover that I might make out of it. So moving on to what I'm dreaming about, I saw the most recent issue of the Laine number 10 that just came out, and there's this pattern in it called Selly by Alex Bird, and it is gorgeous, super simple, but then she's got this cool design on the outside that is this technique that's apparently, very rarely used, called Hrachovec, and I totally butchered that, and it's a technique from a small area in Estonia. It's a beautiful stitching on the side, and I love the possibilities of what colors to put together, so that's something that I will be definitely putting on my queue shortly. Moving on from Blast from the Stash, I used the random number generator, and I picked number 14, and number 14 is a relatively recent acquisition. So I sort my stash by most recently added, and it came up with this Rowan Kid Silk Haze, which I only have 3 skeins here, but I have enough for a sweater quantity held double. Gotta love lace where you can hold it double and make another DK weight sweater. And my plan is to make the Oslo sweater by Petite Knits. So not the Petite Knitter like I mentioned before, but Petite Knits. And this colorway is called Blur. It is super soft, and honestly, this is going to be a super warm sweater. I don't know when I'm going to make this, but hopefully I can make it for next winter. I love how the halo of this and the feel. And I have knit with Rowan Kitzel Haze before, but used it for the lining of mittens and had it be super, super soft and super warm. So this is gonna be a warm sweater. So to wrap up my podcast, I'd like to ask you a couple questions, and I'd love to hear your responses below in the comments, or you can touch base with me on Instagram or on Ravelry, and my contact details are below. One, I'd like to know what your knitting goals are for 2021. Are you going to be knitting 21 hats? Are you going to be knitting more? Are you going to be knitting 21 different kinds of sweaters? What are your knitting goals? They can be small, they can be big. I get really inspired by hearing what other people are aspiring to do. And secondly, I'd like to hear about what do you like to watch or listen to while you knit. I am going into 2021 with the need to refresh my podcast list and add to it, and I'd love to be exposed to more. Thanks for joining me today, and Happy New Year.